Yo, this is Bench Gamer here. So I have finished my first 2 to 3 hours of gameplay for Wuthering Waves, and I think I can give you a pretty accurate depiction and first impression of the game now. I don't think I need to play too much more of it to give you this, because I think the next maybe 12 to 16 hours of the game is probably going to be almost the exact same thing I've been doing for the first 2 to 3 hours, which is just going around the map, killing stuff, collecting chests, and leveling up my characters and leveling up my talents and that sort of stuff. Probably just getting a bit more of the premium currency so I can do some more wishes and hopefully get GN. So that's the plan for the next day of gameplay. But as for my first 2 to 3 hours, I think it's pretty typical of what I've been hearing on the internet, what you can probably see on subreddit and Twitter about people complaining about stuff that has been going on in the game, and how, generally speaking, there seems to be a stream of discontent over the game's current state. So let me just describe to you what my first 2 to 3 hours like. First off, I play Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact in a widescreen monitor resolution. I use 2560 times 1080p. So that resolution is not available as far as I can see in Wuthering Waves. So that immediately ticked me off. That was a bit confusing to me, but full screen is okay. I can still do 1440p just fine. I probably have to stare at the monitor a bit farther away because my frame of vision is it has to cover the monitor more, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Basically, I just have to sit further away, or else it feels a bit nauseous. So that was a tiny bit annoying. The other thing that kind of annoyed me was that the mouse sensitivity as well as the camera sensitivity in general seems to be a bit off. It feels like I have to swivel my. It takes a lot to swivel around my character. It feels like the sensitivity for changing the camera should be increased by like at least 2 times or maybe like 1.5 times for it to feel accurate. I've also heard people say on the internet that um, the sensitivity is catered towards a joystick. So if you're using a mouse, it doesn't work properly. Where if you swing it too widely, then it'll just go too slowly. But if you swing it just a little bit, then if you move it just a little bit, it'll swing around the character faster. So I don't know if that is true. Personally, I haven't experienced that. It just feels slow in general, or maybe it's just because I move my mouse too fast for me to feel the slow motion, fast motion difference. So the camera has been a bit of a downer. I also think that it jerks around too often. It feels like there's no smoothing going on. So whenever you start climbing something, even if it's a little object, then the camera will just like boing and boing, go up and down and up and down and up and down. And that's sort of made me a bit nauseous. So hopefully they fix that in the future. It's not like the biggest deal of all time, but it does kind of hurt my enjoyment. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that the graphics seem a bit muddy. I don't know if this is something that is done on purpose. There's like DLSS options, there's like anti-aliasing options. Personally, I have everything turned on to maximum except for motion blur. So this is basically how the game looks, and it is still looking pretty muddy. It feels very blurry. I don't know why. Maybe it's something to do with the anti-aliasing, but it definitely looks not as pretty as Genshin Impact. I personally feel like the environmental graphics in general are not as, because they're not as stylized as Genshin Impact, right? They're still stylized, but they're not as stylized as Genshin Impact. So it's very hard for me to compare. I don't want to say that the environment is just straight up worse looking than Genshin, but I definitely do not prefer it compared to Genshin Impact or even Honkai Star Rail's. I feel like Honkai Star Rail's graphics are just a tiny bit better when it comes to overall presentation of things. So it feels like it's serviceable, but it's not the best thing in the world. It's not what I would play this game for. So if you're looking for a good looking game to run around in and just enjoy the space in general and just laze around and look at the sky and look at all the pretty stars, I think maybe you would just maybe stick to Genshin Impact. So I think that's the third thing that it didn't piss me off, but it certainly was. It was something I expected because people already said during the beta that the colors were kind of washed out, and it wasn't as stylized in a way that was attractive. So this didn't surprise me, but it is what it is, right? And I think the fourth thing was that the dialogue, when you start the game, you're basically just thrown into all of this like dialogue, techno, sci-fi, mumbo jumbo jargon. There's also a lot of Chinese names, which personally I don't mind because I am Chinese. So it's kind of like I don't plan on playing this game in English. It doesn't really matter to me. I can pronounce the names just fine. There is Yang Yang though. Yang Yang's English voice is kind of weird. She kind of sways between a very depressed little girl to someone who is just like very excited and shouty all the time, and she kind of gasps in a really weird, maybe not sexual way, but it just feels weird the way that she kind of gasps sometimes when she runs around. I don't know if you've experienced this, but it feels like she's always on the opposite ends of a certain personality. So I'm definitely going to be switching over full time to Chinese voiceovers in my next day of the gameplay. So that probably won't bother me too much anymore. I already play Genshin and Honkai Star in Chinese, so this is not something that personally affects me. But if you're looking forward to nice English voice acting, then maybe your mileage might vary compared to mine, and you might prefer it, but I certainly don't at this point. They also pronounce the Chinese words in very inconsistent ways. It reminds me of Liyue a lot when we first went there in Genshin Impact. They pronounced Liyue in like three different ways. That's even worse than that. This is even worse than Genshin. So I don't know. If you're here for nice English voice acting, you just do you, I guess. And I think that's basically it in terms of the things I didn't like about the game. Um, it feels the actual exploration feels a bit finicky. I don't know if that's just me, but it feels like there are a lot more surfaces in this game that you cannot run on. Or okay, so if you're a Genshin player, you don't probably don't know what I mean. You can run on walls in this game, but it's basically just faster climbing. So you're not really running, you're just like climbing faster. um there are there are ways for you to like do a leap over certain surfaces that are blocking you, because you can do like you can grab onto it with your hand when you meet a surface that is like just a little bit jutting out, and then your character will just like do a backflip over it, and that's really cool. But the problem is that the detection for that is kind of weird, and there's also the janky camera that is just like going up and down all the time, so it feels like it doesn't feel as cool as it could be. Like it feels like it's one of those things that would be, oh my god, that sounds so cool in concept, but then in actual practice it's just not as cool. It just feels like it feels like one of those things that they added into the game to make it stand out compared to Genshin, but it doesn't really. It just makes it feel kind of weird. In execution, a lot of things about Wuthering Waves in execution feel like they should be cooler than Genshin, but they don't. I don't know if this is an experience that other people will share. So please don't flame me if you disagree. Just maybe explain it properly in the comment section, and then other people can like flame you for that, so I can get interactions. Thanks. Anyways, those are pretty much all the things I don't like about Wuthering Waves, which frankly is quite a lot when it comes to a new game that is supposed to be competing with Genshin Impact. At this point, you can probably already tell that I don't prefer this game over Genshin. I do think that this game has things such as the combat that I would think that I prefer. No, I don't like necessarily prefer, but I think it is a substantial addition to this genre that I would, I can see being a standout compared to Genshin. I definitely feel like it is much more reactive. It is much more back and forth. The enemy will do attacks faster than in Genshin. The enemies are in general just more threatening than in Genshin Impact, and you can react to them in more ways. You can dodge them, you can parry them, and then you can do like a break on their shields, and then you can do more damage. I assume that's usually how these shield things work. And there's like different swapping mechanics you can do with your characters. All of that is super interesting. I can just run around this game and kill things all day, and I can be entertained by just doing that. That is one strength that this game has, I think, over Genshin Impact. I think going around killing stuff in Wuthering Waves is more interesting than Genshin. And that is its main draw for me right now. It's just like going around and doing the actual combat. I'm kind of dreading going into the story. Like I've tried to understand the story, and there's like all of this like these like resin. Oh my god, I'm having a migraine trying to aneurysm trying to just explain the story. Basically, there are these things called echoes, or like these are there are like these domains that show up pop up all over the country. Basically, there's like this country, and there's all of these like different domains that pop up all over the place, and they're like bosses or something, and you just beat the shit out of them. That's basically the story. You beat the shit out of them. And that's as much as I can tell you about the story so far. I think there's something to do with sound and echoes, because it has echoes, and there's like this grand magistrate or something who has like a special eye that can see your frequency. And I don't know, man. I don't know what the story is. Please don't ask me. But the combat's fun, and Yeah, that's the entire game. If you are into this for the combat, I think you will have a good time. But if you, if you want a story that is enjoyable on a moment to moment basis, remember the video I made just like 2 days ago about how Penacony had a bunch of word garbage and word bloat and dialogue bloat, and it was just like too wordy. Well, this game is like that, but kind of worse. So, hey, at least the combat's fun, right? And that's basically my entire review. Now that I think about it, all the things that people are saying online are basically just mirroring mine. I don't think there's anything substantially different that people on Reddit are saying that is different than mine. What I am saying, basically, everybody is saying that the combat is pretty fun, but everything else is either subpar, worse than Genshin, or at least at the very best, at least as good as Genshin. Like, let's be honest, there's nothing here besides the combat that stands out compared to Genshin Impact. It feels like there's no reason for this game to exist in the way that it does. It feels like they just threw PGR into like it feels like they were trying to make open world PGR when they could have just made another PGR. Why didn't they do that? Because I wonder if they moved up the schedule for this game's release so that it wouldn't have to compete with Zenless Zone Zero. Because let's be honest, it feels like this game released too soon. It feels like this game could have used another 3 to 4 months in the oven. But we all know that Zenless Zone Zero is coming out in 2 months. I think it's less than 2 months now because no, it's almost in exactly 2 months. It's like the 22nd. I don't know. I forgot. I think it's either the 4th of July or like the 22nd of July, or I think it's the 4th of July. So in less than 2 months, Zenless Zone Zero is coming out, and Natlan is also coming out for Genshin Impact. And then I don't know what Honkai Star is doing. Actually, I do know, but I don't think it's too much of a big deal. Basically, it feels like one of the things that people are saying online, and something that I personally also kind of believe that has a bit of credibility, is that they were trying to push up, push up the release of their Wuthering Waves. I've also heard rumors that they were running low on money, and maybe they just need an injection of cash. And hopefully, with that injection of resources, they can make the game a lot better, so that hopefully this game has a future. I don't want this game to fail, guys. I actually want more competition. I want more. It's just more fun for me. If it's just Genshin and Hoyoverse games all the time, you do get bored of having the same thing over and over again, even if it is different games. I feel like there is a certain way that Hoyoverse does things, and having another franchise in the mix would make things a lot more interesting. So I want this game to succeed. I want them to make this game better. I want them to fix the camera, fix the blurriness issue I have, fix the jankiness of the camera and the motion detection for my mouse, and all of that stuff. It can be fixed. There is a good game at its core for Wuthering Waves. It's just a bit hard to see it right now behind all the dialogue bloat, behind all the things that are just either as good as Genshin Impact or frankly just worse. So we'll see how the game pans out when I reach the end game. That'll probably be in like a week or two, depending on how fast I play the game. I'm planning on no-lifing the game for at least 2 or 3 days. So maybe I'll get to it by then. And we'll see. I'll make another video when I do get there. But yeah, that's basically all I feel about Wuthering Waves right now. This game is not the Genshin Killer. This game is not even the Zenless Zone Killer. This game is not killing anything. But it is pretty fun when you do the combat. And that's about it. This is Bench Gamer signing out. I'll see you guys sometimes. Bye bye.